Hello and welcome to a new season of It's More Than Just Sports. I'm your host, Stephen Babb. With this show, we will tackle societal issues that may or may not be tied into sports, but definitely deserve attention of a panel. Today, I'm joined by Brian Nelson, Miles Perry, and Mike Mulberger. Today, we're going to talk about the NFL National Anthem protest, a little bit about why it started, what it is exactly, and maybe what the NFL could do moving forward. So, Brian, let's talk a little bit about 2009 and what the NFL did in 2009.
Yeah, they struck up a deal with the military to actually get paid by the military to broadcast the national anthem, and that was a way for the military to sort of increase recruitment, because obviously the NFL it's caters to young people, especially young men. It's watched by millions of people, so why wouldn't they want the military, the national anthem, to be broadcast to try to draw in that sense of patriotism in those young viewers to try to increase recruitment? But a lot of people don't realize that the NFL is actually paid by the military to broadcast those.
There's definitely a mystique I think children kind of are drawn to when they see uniformed military personnel. Oftentimes there's the flag, the flyovers that are typical of an NFL national anthem. Miles, in 2016, kind of take us through what happened in the preseason of that year.
In the preseason, I believe that's when Kaepernick first took his seat on the bench, actually. And that's when the movement first was created, and I guess a lot of people didn't notice it at first. And then eventually, going on into the season, a lot of people was like, I don't know, media started to draw attention to it. So.
Yeah, and then Mike, kind of, what are the reasons that Kaepernick did start this protest?
Yeah, so I think one of the main reasons why he started doing it was because of police brutality. I remember he did at first when we saw him sit on the bench and the kneel, I have a lot of family in the military, kind of like, what the heck, what is he doing? It's a sign of disrespect. But once he started to get word out, he did it for the social injustice and police brutality. But the thing I think that kind of hurt his message getting across was, I think it was like a couple practices after he was wearing the socks where it was like a pig with a cop hat on. I was like,
I remember that.
Yeah.
So, Brian, so Kaepernick is taking a knee. He's talking about social injustices. How did we end up where we're at today?
Well, that's definitely a long story. I'm gonna sit back in my seat and try to think of how to tell this story. But really, it goes back to the preseason. Like Miles said, when he first sat down on the bench, it was week 1 of a preseason game, not a lot of attention. But then it was week 2, week 3. The starters start playing more, and Lord knows the ESPN week could be slow, and they noticed something odd about a player sitting down during the national anthem. That's not something we've ever seen, really, or at least not to this extent. And so once the reporters asked him after the game, like, why did you take a seat, he kind of explained his reasoning. And because of the kind of the social climate of the time then and the time now, that really resonated with, I think, a lot of people with police brutality, injustices for minorities. And so with that message, he continued it. And so now that he did it once and ESPN highlighted it, now ESPN is looking to see if he'll do it again, and he did. And then, Mike, you were talking to us before the show about something Kaepernick did in response to some of the criticism for him sitting down on the bench.
Yeah. I'll shed some light. I remember the first thing Kaepernick did was he just sat down, but I remember there was a story ESPN did about it. This military guy, I think he was a colonel, he ended up writing a letter to Kaepernick. He was pretty ticked off. He said, what are you doing to sign disrespect, all that. Well, Kaepernick actually ended up meeting with the guy in the military, and they came to a compromise, which was pretty neat. The guy told him in the military, he said, what the military like doing is we like taking a kneel for the lost or for the forgotten, and so why don't you try taking a kneel? So what you saw in all the magazines, the first time Kaepernick took that kneel was you see Kaepernick take a kneel, and you see that military guy in the back with his hand over his heart. So I just thought that's kind of shows that Kaepernick was able to compromise, and he's open to some criticism.
Yeah, and I think with that compromise, it kind of showed that he had pure intentions with this protest. And, if you look through history, taking a knee was a sign of respect or even allegiance. So say I'm a king in medieval times in Europe, and I'm saying bow down to me. Bend the knee was a term that was used, and it's kind of more popular now because of Game of Thrones and bending the knee to those in power. And it's a sign of allegiance, in my opinion, and it's definitely a respectful symbol as opposed to say sitting down or maybe turning your back, which would be more disrespectful. So Miles, what other players, or has there been any other people like to kind of take Kaepernick's side in this issue?
I believe Marshawn Lynch at some point, and then I know Michael Bennett, Eric Reed, teammate of his, and that's on like I can name.
Yeah, and Marshawn Lynch, in fact, last November there was a Raiders game versus the Patriots in Mexico City, where Marshawn actually sat for the U.S. national anthem and then stood for the Mexico national anthem. It came out later that he really stood for the Mexican national anthem, kind of out of indifference. He wasn't really paying attention to that, but he more so wanted to make a statement of sitting during the U.S. national anthem. So, Brian, how did we get to a disrespect of the flag when it was definitely just a peaceful, nonviolent protest about injustice, and now it's about patriotism?
Well, it just shows the power of the national anthem, and it shows the power of the symbol of like the American flag. A lot of people in this country, rightfully so, have a lot of importance to the national anthem and a lot of feelings attached to it. So the fact that somebody makes a statement using that as their vehicle, that's obviously going to spark a lot of people's attention. And, when people get emotional, it can kind of tunnel vision, like that's all they think about is the act itself and maybe not the intent behind the action. But, it's not the first time we've seen something like that in terms of race. Jesse Owens, right, with the Olympics and the fist, and Tommy Smith. Yeah. So we've seen athletes in the past make statements surrounding patriotism in order to kind of bring a spotlight to police brutality and racial issues.
Injustices. So, fast forward to today and this presidential administration, Mike, what did they do? Like, what's the NFL doing right now to address this issue?
Well, I heard that they're coming out with two new options. One is if you kneel, you'll be fined, and another one is you could just stay in the locker room. Is the other option. At the end of the day, players, yes, it is freedom of speech. It's up to them to choose. I think there's plenty of different other avenues they could have went about it. But talking with a bunch of my other buddies, they said, they've tried those routes, but it didn't work. So this is kind of the best way to do it. At the end of the day, it's freedom of speech. They can do what they want. Personally, I think if you're going to go out there and kneel, just hang out in the locker room for a little bit. Maybe do your little pregame ritual there. But at the end of the day, it's totally up to the player to choose what he wants to do. And I even heard some owners said if their players do kneel, they'll pay the fines, which is kind of neat for the player too. So it just comes down to preference basically for the player.
Hey, Miles, how do you feel about the attitude towards the anthem versus kind of the attitude about the protest and what originated with the protest?
When it comes down to the attitude of the anthem and versus the protest, it's more. I feel more so like it's. I don't agree like how the NFL came down on it. Like I don't feel like they should put a fine on it necessarily. I just feel like going off what Mark said, they shouldn't let the players just sit in the locker room if you feel like you're gonna take a knee or something. Versus like going out there and you're just getting fined. Man, I don't think.
I don't see the point. And Brian, what do you think about the NFL giving the players a choice to stay in the locker room or go into the night, get fined if they protest?
Well, obviously, it's leading the witness a little bit. It's like, hey, you don't want to get fined, just stay in the locker room. Obviously, that's a good choice if you want to keep your money. So obviously, it's a way for the NFL to really stifle the protest and really have it not be a part of their national anthems anymore. But I think, ironically, it's shed more spotlight and prolonged the issue and had it be a talking point even longer, because I think kind of socially, we've all sort of gotten a little fatigue from all the anthem talk over. It's been 2 years now of talking about this issue, and them instituting this policy to get rid of it just kind of reignites the flame again. And I think a lot of people aren't happy about the fine, and I think the origins of the fine are really interesting because in the Kaepernick separate issue, Kaepernick is suing the NFL for collusion because he believes that he was blackballed out of the league, and they subpoenaed Jerry Jones, and I think he said under oath that Donald Trump, the president, actually had some influence into squashing the anthem protests and has said you got to get rid of it.
Basically saying that this is in our best interest, but kind of more so making it about his best interest. Yeah. And it's interesting that a sitting president would have influence over a private company like the NFL, because at the end of the day, the NFL is a business.
And we talk about how does this issue get skewed from what it was originally about with police brutality, and how does the message get messed up? Well, the president gets involved because, I mean, he has a tendency to do that sometimes. When he's focused on an issue, he can kind of divert the attention to what he believes.
And kind of distort the message and control the narrative.
Another thing, too, I'm curious about is, for basketball games and baseball, you don't see the anthem being played at all before getting on. They just it just starts at pretty much tip-off or leading up to you. They don't show football's the only one, right?
For regular season,
yeah,
regular season broadcasts.
Yeah.
Now I know that baseball and the NBA will show the anthem for
the
playoff
finals,
games, finals, things like that. But you don't really see the type of protest or the type of coverage in other sports that you do the NFL. Miles, kids look up to the NFL, and kids, often emulate their favorite players. What do you think this kind of impact of this protest would have on kids?
It's going to be a long-lasting one. I feel like kids are going to see this on TV happening, and, they're going to be like, dang, what are they doing it for? And, going on and, seeing they're actually going to get more involved in, news because they're going to actually start looking into, why are they doing this?
And all this coverage on ESPN.
Exactly.
And I know when I was a kid, I watched ESPN religiously because that's where I got all, my sports info from. And now all this kind of coverage. Mike, do you think the kids are going to, start to take a knee like NFL players?
I mean, I've already seen it. Some games I went to, I remember going with, some of my cousins again. I'm already seeing kids take knees. And, I mean, there's even times I've gone to some sports games. I've even seen fans already taking knees, all that. But at the end of the day, I mean, everybody, if you talk to all the athletes to see, first, it was on police brutality and social injustice. It feels like now everybody's doing it for a bunch of different issues. So, I mean, I remember seeing a kid kneel and once I said, "Hey, why are you kneeling, buddy?" And he said, "I don't know. I saw the athletes do it." So, but it will give the kids a chance though to look into why their favorite player is kneeling. It will raise more awareness on the issue at a younger age, which is kind of neat.
As long as it's not the convoluted issue of making it about patriotism and the social justice issue, which was the original purpose of the protest. Brian, what would you like to see the NFL do moving forward? Maybe not, I know you probably don't agree with this fine, but what would you like to see them do for this issue?
I mean, really what I would like to see is some more support and more concrete support rather than them having to fight their way to have the NFL support their players and what they believe in, because there are specific causes. Like Chris Long, for example, he donated his entire salary to benefit some charitable organizations that he believed in, and so the NFL, I think they can, instead of fight the players and worry about their image and their bottom line, because really what they're worried about is them losing sponsorships, how their viewership is going down. They're caring about it as a business, and obviously they are a business, but you gotta believe when this is such a touchy humanistic issue that they would provide more support, and not only just verbal support, but use that pocketbook that you're making all this money off of these players. And I think they should support them more in terms of concrete charitable organizations that are actually going to create some change in society. Because obviously this issue is not going away overnight. It's going to take a long process. And so I think the NFL, if they get involved, it can at least speed up that process a little bit.
What I appreciate most, I think, about Chris Long taking the stance that he has is it's showing that this is a societal issue. This isn't a color or a race issue. This isn't something that just affects one certain group of people. Like, I truly believe that it affects us as a whole. Miles, what would you maybe like to see the NFL do moving forward?
Just give more power to the players and get more involved in communities, because I believe that's why there's a lot of like confusion going on here, and that's why the the owners tend to vote a certain way, because they don't know their players that well. That's why I feel like so.
Yeah, I think that's the great point is, being more involved in, if I was the owner of a company, knowing more about my employees and understanding them better. I mean, you're going to get better production out of your employees at the end of the day if you do that.
got some owners who said they're backing their players saying, hey, if you do knee, I'll pay the fine. So I mean, but not every owner's like that.
No, that's very true.
The most prominent one, at least, Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones.
And when America's team, that's a huge spotlight that I think one owner, Jerry Richardson, selling the team, like he was another one that sort of was on the side of kind of fighting against the players, and him selling the team, I think definitely changes that aspect with
that dynamic.
Panthers.
Yeah. I personally think that maybe the NFL goes back to not broadcasting the anthem. Like, if this is that big of an issue to you, and you feel so strongly about this, and it's obvious that the NFL doesn't really respect the players' opinions, if they're willing to fine them for their opinions, like, maybe just go back to not broadcasting the anthem at all. I mean, I really don't know. As a fan, I would miss seeing the anthem before a game. That's usually when I'm getting my snacks and stuff ready. Like, I'm usually not even really paying that much attention to the broadcast. Now, if I was at the game, that's different. I'm definitely standing at attention and showing respect to the flag. And again, I'm not protesting anything per se when I'm at, Levi Stadium watching the 49ers play. But this is definitely a hot button issue that I do not think is going to go away anytime soon. But it's good to have open discussions about this. It's a very divisive issue. The entire country seems to be divided. I don't know anybody that's in the middle of this issue. It's either you're on one side or you're on the other side. And there hasn't been a lot of productive discussion to go towards solving an issue like this. I'm all for them protesting. I think they have every right to. And this is definitely an issue. I don't think it's going to be resolved overnight, and it's going to take dialogue like this to kind of help come to some kind of an agreement, and maybe affect actual change within these communities. So that's going to do it for today. That's all the time that we have for this episode of It's More Than Just Sports. I'd like to thank my panel: Brian Nelson, Miles Perry, and Mike Bolberg. I'm your host, Stephen Babb. Until next time.
If you are interested in a career in sports broadcasting,
whether you're commentating a live game
or hosting your own TV show,
or working behind the scenes, then this is the class for you.
For more information, contact Greg Poff, that's me, at solano.edu.
We hope to see you here next semester, and remember,
it's more than just sports, it's an education.